welcome everyone. My name is Molly Redfield and I'm the Communications and Event Manager for New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility. I'm happy to invite Rose Lowry, Principal of Beach Leaf Design, to share a few words as a sponsor and introduce our session. So Michelle and I love working with Rose on our ad design, and we hope, very soon for in-person event invitations as well.
Hi, I'm Rose Lowry of Beach Leaf Design. We do graphic design for websites and all kinds of printed marketing materials. At Beach Leaf Design, our #1 goal is to use our powers for good. I have a ton of experience, and I'm especially good at helping my clients get the most bang from their marketing buck. Whether it's a small organization or a large department, we can help them take a load off their marketing workload or help them look established, professional, and totally inviting to whomever their stakeholders are. I especially want to support eco-friendly companies that are interested in preserving the extraordinary Eden that is this planet Earth that we live on. I love being a sponsor and vocal advocate for NHBSR. Encouraging more businesses to participate is an effective way that I can amplify my goals to make the world a better place. Every new organization and business that attends this conference will be inspired to do better in every level of their business. And those ripples impact the culture around us to be more mindful about intentionally having a positive impact on social issues and the environment. So with all that in mind, I'm very pleased to introduce someone who definitely wants to make the world a better place, Lindsay Simpson of the Richards Group. Lindsay is running the next session titled Leadership for a Culture of Wellbeing. Enjoy the inspiration.
So welcome everybody. My name is Lindsay Simpson. I serve as one of 2 organizational wellness leads for the Richards Group. We are a full service insurance consulting business. I sit on the employee benefits team, and we serve clients in Vermont and New Hampshire, some of whom are probably on this call today. So I'm really pleased to be here. My background is in public health and employee wellness, but we're specifically going to talk today about how we build a culture for well-being from the leadership angle. So I'm really pleased to be here, and thanks for this honor. My intention this morning is to be really interactive with you and hope to recreate as best we can that in-person learning and collaborative collegial experience. So I just want to point out, we're going to have a poll question. I really want to encourage use of the chat. I'm going to try to monitor that as best I can. I've got Seth's help to do that this morning. And then that raise your hand button in the tray of resources from Zoom. Please feel free to use that to share thoughts or as we go through. So let's get started with that poll. So the question for you, I'm curious who's here with us. What is your role in your organization? And also maybe you can put into the chat box the organization that you represent. And if it's not immediately apparent from the title, a description of maybe the industry that you represent would be helpful too. So I'll watch for that. So looking for your role in the organization, because that, really leadership can come from any level. It doesn't mean you necessarily have a title attached to that role that makes you a leader. We are all leaders in our own way, in our own roles. So how are we doing there, Seth? Great. Hi, Anne. Welcome, Lindsay. Marianne, Molly. This is great. Thank you for being here. Community organizer, hi, Leah. And a disability advocate in Concord, wonderful. And Molly says we're 20% C-suite. Can you, from the poll? Great. Here's those results. So thank you. About 20% C-suite, just a very few from human resources and organizational development, more so core staff. And oh, I'm so curious what the other is this morning. What did I maybe miss in terms of a descriptor? Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. I want to start today by helping us dive into and think about the specific factors that make or design and cause an environment for people to really thrive in your workplace. And then we'll get into sort of the specifics of what I mean by well-being and how we address that from a leadership perspective. So the prompt here is for you to think about what I call a peak life experience. So a really formative moment experience in your life that changed you in some ways, and you carry that forward. It might be a story that you like to tell about your experience in the world. And the point is for you to reflect on it and then think about what are those key factors that made that a peak life experience for you. And then we'll think about how we can apply that in the context of leadership for well-being. So I want to contextualize this with an example. When I think about a peak life experience professionally, a couple of years ago, I used to work for the Vermont Agency of Education, and I had the opportunity to manage a budget and some professional learning for teachers. With that responsibility, I took a pretty big risk for me at that time and hired someone I've never worked with before to help me coordinate a hybrid learning course for 3 credits for those teachers. It turned out to be one of really kind of wise and beneficial, risky decisions that I've ever made, because the person I ended up hiring became just wildly critical to the success of that project. We hit it off really well. We clicked on many levels, but what I think about when I think about the factors that made that a peak experience for me, it's that there was a huge challenge on the table. I had a lot of people counting on me to do this well, but I had a thinking partner and a collaborator and a trusted expert in the field who pushed boundaries, held really high expectations, but did so in a really supportive, clear way that was also very flexible. So those are some of those factors that made that a peak experience. I wonder, as you hear that example, can you write in that chat box, what are some of those factors that made for a peak experience that you're reflecting on? Risk tends to be one of them, or high stakes. Also collaboration or working with others. So shared responsibility. Connected to the divine. Oh, I'm so curious about that one, Deb. Decision. Yep. Okay. Connect with self. Oh, good. So self-actualization, being able to connect with our purpose. Oh, that's interesting. So this common experience, an implicit bias I had against another culture. So uncovering a new piece of learning of ourselves that can be really transformative. Overcoming personal limits. Wonderful. So these can be really empowering moments for us. They might be uncomfortable, but really empowering in the end. Fulfillment, getting to know colleagues and build genuine connections, totally unrelated to work. Yes, playing music with colleagues. I love that example. Thank you, John. So let's hold these factors of success in mind as we think about how to build a culture of well-being. So the objectives for today that I hope you'll hold me accountable to are, we're going to consider what are those elements of a successful system that support what I call whole person growth. We'll have an opportunity to assess. I think I need to come back here. Did I cut out for a minute?
You did cut out, but you're good
Okay.
now.
I'm sorry, folks. So assess the values and then the policies and practices that those values can be applied to drive for well-being. And then I'm going to challenge you to identify actionable strategies for a thriving culture. So Seth is going to hopefully be able to post a handout that I prepared for you so that you can use that as part of your reflection process today. Thanks, Seth. I see that now. Okay, so what do I mean by holistic approach to well-being? When I work with clients to determine and plan a well-being strategy for employees, we think about this across sort of these 5 core elements. Physical, meaning having the good health and energy to get things done. Emotional, having the skills and resilience to maintain balance. I love that came up in Margaret Heverman's talk just this morning. Financial well-being. So stretching beyond that idea of physical activity and food to thinking about what are the stressors that employees bring to work and how can we help support them to overcome those stressors. Financial well-being can be a big one. So helping folks manage finances to increase their sense of security, their planfulness for future, their resilience to handle unexpected financial crises. When we look at environmental factors, no doubt there's many of you on the call who have a business strategy that's very well aligned with the environmental action. What I mean by this, though, is in the context of health enhancing spaces and resources for employees. So that might look like lots of natural light in the workplace, green plants, having it might be having an employee gym and shower to encourage physical activity during the workday, a kitchen to prepare and store food safely and healthfully. And then the last sort of category here is social. So recognizing that people make health behaviors and decisions in an ongoing way that are very well nested in the context of those social relationships and a supportive community. So a few years ago, the American Psychological Association did a survey and found that almost 3/4 of employees noted that they are more likely to develop healthy lifestyle when their leaders are supportive of health and wellness in the workplace. And so wanting to share this with you and help you think about what can you do as a leader? What do we need to know in order to make decisions? So the next piece is encouraging you as leaders to think about a humanistic approach to well-being, knowing that we all come to work every day with changing well-being needs, and that those needs change over our tenure of employment. So what a 24-year-old employee needs is probably very different than what they'll need at age 54, and acknowledging that you're not going to be everything to everyone all the time, but it's important to build a strategy that allows for opportunities where people can plug in when they're ready and when it's of utmost importance to them. So I also want to encourage you to think about, what do employees need to thrive in the workplace? And this work comes from Daniel Pink. So he helps us understand that folks need 3 things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I was really delighted to hear that Margaret Hefferman was talking about thinking experimentally. So when we think about programs and strategies for support of employee well-being, some of that might be around individual goal setting. And the message here is that employees need to have the autonomy to set goals that are truly meaningful for them. Sometimes we think we know what's best for someone else, and we try to sort of push our agenda or convince them to take on a challenge or a goal that we think is better for them. But ultimately, that individual really has to be bought in and select that for themselves. They need to be able to do so in an environment that promotes mastery. So mastery really means having the challenge of something that's at an appropriate level that is interesting and engaging, but not so hard that it's demotivating, and also not so easy that it's sort of boring or easy for someone to sort of blow off. And then that this environment needs to really connect with that individual's purpose. So helping them to understand the why they're setting that well-being goal or strategy, not just that kind of surface level reason. So I like to think about the example of weight loss. If someone is focused on and ready to lose weight, wonderful, let's meet them where they are. And let's help them get hopefully past those superficial reasons of like, I want to look better or I want to feel good in my clothes, to the meaning about what it will enable them to do differently, or how they'll be able to live their life differently with weight loss. So maybe it's about having more energy to play with grandkids, or taking a lifetime dream trip, getting back to an old hobby or sport maybe that was really impactful for that person. So getting at that purpose, this is what people need to really thrive and drive that change for well-being in an experimental way. And then folks really need to have support. Social support is highly critical for working on our own well-being change process. So we'll talk more specifically about how you can create that in the workplace as a leader. I want to think now about what are some determinants of health and what do we know from the data. So showing this here, I'll give you a minute to look through this. And then I'm curious what A, resonates with you, or B, might be a surprise. And please put that in the chat box. So what we learn here is that genes and biology really only represent about 10% of an individual's determinant for health. Clinical care, 10%. The physical environment, actually also 10%, but really the majority here is made up of those socioeconomic factors that are unique to that individual, and then the health behaviors that they choose. 30% of that piece of determinants. So again, I'm just sort of curious, what is landing as you look at this? Maybe is stretching your thinking. How can you apply this in the workplace as a leader? Okay, Jill, thank you. Socioeconomic factors has a huge role to play in an individual's determinants of health. So one of the, especially for those who are low or moderately paid wage workers, thinking about what is their home environment like? What kinds of supports do they have socially in their community, in their living situation, that helps them make healthy choices? Health behaviors, again, are not selected in an individual context. They're selected in the context of our social relationships and our resources and our culture. And so as an employer, as a leader, you can shape this to some degree. Not surprising, says Leah, socioeconomic factors play a huge role, but I think that our culture often doesn't acknowledge this, yes, and views that health is solely a result of individual health behaviors. Thank you, Leah. Yeah, I think we overvalue the health behavior aspect here and under-recognize the importance of these other factors. And yet, as an employer, as a leader, there's other things you can do to influence, like clinical care. Are you providing a strong health and wellness set of benefits, health plan that gives people access to clinical care? Can you bring clinical care on site to your employees? So many changes in this past year that allow for more remote access to clinical care, whether that's mental health care or physical health care. It's been, I think, a really positive change that we've experienced as a result of the pandemic. Okay, so then the next thing I want to share with you is thinking about the stages of behavior change itself. And this can apply to many different contexts, but let's think about this in the context of health behavior change. If we agree that employers have a role to play in supporting health behavior change, it's really important to understand this process and acknowledge the difficulty and complexity of it for individuals. So I like to think about a classic example of tobacco cessation. I'm sure in your lifetime, you've known folks who've been tobacco users and probably wanted them to quit. Maybe you are a tobacco user yourself, and maybe you work through some of these stages in your quit cycle. But there's a couple things that really stick out here that I want to point out is that folks have to move through this kind of pre-contemplation stage where they have no intention of changing their behavior. And it doesn't matter how much education we provide. And we often think in wellness that oh, I'll just provide a seminar or more learning opportunity, and that will be the thing that clicks people over into making a health behavior change. But that's not necessarily always true. We have to also provide examples in the workplace as leaders. We also need to provide that social support. So acknowledging again from this model that there's this upward spiral of learning that happens when people have an attempt at behavior change and inevitably relapse. Health behavior change are hard to sustain, and we need to plan for and expect that people are going to relapse and be mindful and empathetic about that. Encouraging people to treat that not as failure, but as a learning process. So this actually comes back to what Margaret Hefferman was saying in terms of business planning. When we think about this in an experimental mindset and a learning mindset, we take away this failure and we help people understand what's working for them and can build onto that next cycle of behavior change with that new learning and get better the next time. I'm just looking at your comment here, John. I find this intriguing because many nonprofits, there's a culture where almost all of these factors are ignored and that they don't exist. Perhaps a legacy of we can't have nice things viewpoint on nonprofit out where we consider these factors outside the scope of what is even possible. Yeah, that might be a limiting mindset. Thank you, Marianne. Yes, empathy is really, really important when it comes to health behavior change. And we need to model that as leaders. So let's move on. I'm hearing a little bit about what resonates. I'm loving this use of the chat box. Thank you. Keep that going. And again, I'll encourage you to raise your hand if you have, this is a moment here where we can pause and just hear so far what has resonated for you, or maybe what challenges you're thinking. I'm not sure if I see any hands raised. I'm scanning through the attendee list here. Okay.
Anne's got her hand raised.
Okay. Can you mute Anne? Anne, go ahead.
How much control does a business leader have over choices that their team might make around their physical health? You know, I've grown up with the understanding that there are, obviously we want everyone to be healthy and safe, and I encourage all of those positive things. But at the end of the day, you know, I guess I want to understand from you where you feel like let's say the office environment or the work environment plays a role in someone's specific decision about whether they should have a cigarette or should have a drink or should have something that might not be great for them if they know things about their body. It's just stuff that has always seemed more private to me. Of course, wanting to be there as a support, but not sure exactly where that sort of line between personal privacy and the workplace.
And thank you for that. And what I want to say is that this is sort of an ongoing dance of leadership and bravery around modeling in the workplace and taking steps that are firm and sometimes risky. So it might mean around shaping culture in the organization by doing and saying and committing to things like taking sugar sweetened beverages out of the workplace and only serving healthy foods during work sponsored events. It might be around telling your story as a leader of your own personal well-being journey that models not just the struggle, the success, but also the struggle part of that process. So being kind of vulnerable and open about that can be a really great way to show others that that's what you want to see and have for them as well. So thank you for sharing those comments. I'm going to move ahead here and talk with you about some examples from this book called Forms of Endearment. So some of you maybe just put in that chat box yes or no if you're familiar with this book. But the bottom line here is that these are really well-known, respected companies that are building high performance of business and culture on love. And we rarely use that word in business, but it's truly about creating and using business success for good in the world, helping their people, employees, find that self-actualization, that purpose, using the success of the business to make social transformation, a political change, maybe environmental change. I'm sure you can think of some examples. I don't know if anybody's on here from Stonyfield or Timberland, companies right there in New Hampshire that are very committed to this and successful as a result. These are companies that are successful because they create happy, productive workforces. They attract and retain talent at a high degree. One of the other key factors that, like we talked about this morning, is with the peak experience example, is they create these beneficial partnerships that are mutually beneficial for all involved. So stakeholders, including partners, society as a whole, employees, investors, and other partners in that system. So, for example, Costco is such a kind of well-known, successful business that others who make products want to get on the shelves. They want to do business with Costco and be a partnership in that successful model. Thank you, John. An expression many nonprofits know: people put their money where their heart is. Yes, and this is why the work of nonprofits can be just so compelling and driving for those people who are connecting with their purpose. The other thing is that these companies, these firms of endearment that are successful financially, are welcomed enthusiastically by the communities where they set up shop, so to speak. They're known to have good, stable, high-paying jobs with good benefits. And so people want these companies to come into their communities. So just in terms of how do we measure success, when we look at these companies, firms of endearment here, that blue line, over a standard measure of success, the S&P 500, their growth is, 2,000 times higher. So it's not just good for people and their organization, but it's good for their business and their profit as well. Another example here, set of examples, comes from Patagonia, which is a firm of endearment. I'm sure many of you have enjoyed their products and know some of the secrets to success that this company has. The VP wrote this great article called 5 Ridiculous Ways that Patagonia has built a culture that does well and does good. So some of the keys that he indicates in that article are things like, they have an overwhelming number of applicants for jobs at Patagonia. It's well sought after because it's well known to take care of people. Have things like flexible work environments. They have a model where employees work 80 hours over 9 work days and have every other Friday off. They're well known for being flexible and letting people kind of take the day when the snow is good for skiing or surfing. You might know the book by Chouinard, Let My People Go Surfing. So it's a philosophy that they have embedded in their policies and culture at the organization. A benefit that they've really invested in is providing childcare, not fully subsidized, but a shared subsidy. So helping reduce the stress of childcare, and they have excellent returns for mothers postpartum back to the workplace because they know that they can have children nearby. This is obviously their corporate office, and can have access to their kids if their kid's sick or they want some time with the child during the day that helps feed them and remind them about that piece of their purpose in their life. Another really amazing benefit that Patagonia provides is after a year of employment with the organization, folks can have up to 2 months off paid leave for service in an environmental mission that is personally meaningful, but also aligned with the culture of the company. So Patagonia doesn't have what you might call a traditional kind of incentive-based wellness strategy, but they have a lot of these leadership policies in alignment with culture. that make it an attractive place to work and a successful model. You might also know they have the whole kind of worn wear site where they're sharing, providing access to purchasing their products secondhand. They have a van that, a mobile repair unit that drives around and repairs their products, have a lifetime guarantee on products. So they're really investing in sustainable sourcing of materials that they make their products from. So trying to do good, and really use their success to make change in the world. Another kind of list to look at is this Fortune 100 best companies to work for. What I found really interesting here is if you look at the search criteria for trying to find a best Fortune company, best 100 company, look at how many of these things are well-being related. So tuition reimbursement, there's that financial well-being, subsidized childcare, unlimited sick days, health coverage, again, flexible work weeks or compressed work weeks, health insurance for part-timers, that's a rarity, on-site fitness or subsidized gym. We've got policies around supporting gender difference, sexual orientation difference. So I was just really surprised, and pleasantly so, that these are the criteria that were important in helping people find the companies that are best places to work for. So on a very kind of smaller scale, I wanted to share with you an example from one of the clients that I work with, Mount Scottney Hospital in Windsor, Vermont, a small community hospital, and just talk about the investment they're making. And what's really unique and successful about this organization from a leadership perspective is that they have a clear budget for wellness that is paid for internally. It's actually not coming from, sometimes those funds come from the medical carrier. So they're investing in this. They have a broadly representative, diverse well-being committee that's led by my friend Sandy Dion, who really, this is part of her job description. So in terms of leadership, it's allocating the human personnel to do this work, the fiscal resources, encouraging the committee that works together with diverse perspectives and skill sets. So they have marketing professionals, they have the chef from their food service side, HR, and other managers in the organization that represent the needs of the employees. So one of the things that they do that's part of their wellness system is having a partnership with Work United, who comes on site and helps employees address some of those socioeconomic factors that we talked about earlier. So for those struggling with maybe food security or housing security, financial planning, they can work with PRU and the Work United relationship as an independent, neutral third party that is solely there and dedicated to the employee and their needs. Some of the other things that Mount Scottney has done really well is invested in height adjustable workstations. They've put up the money and the time and resources to make those ergonomic assessments in the workplace and put in the infrastructure to do that, because what they found is they had a high degree of back pain and musculoskeletal claims in their medical claims data, which was costing them money. So doing this from a database perspective. Having on-site, their foundation raised money to purchase a Mamava pod for breastfeeding, to normalize that in the culture, making that accessible not only to employees, but also guests of the organization, of the hospital. So just a few examples here. I'm gonna move through and move ahead here now to talk about what are some of these aspects of leadership that you can think about. And I'm drawing on Brene Brown's work here from Dare to Lead. So looking at how we can, as leaders, move from maybe transitioning from some of these armored leadership approaches to what Brene Brown calls a daring leadership approach to and applying that to well-being. So thanks, Brett, in the chat. You said you have a tower garden or cafe. Yes. So I'm wondering what that means specifically, but I'll have to look at that link. Thank you. yes, getting close to the end here. So as a leader, how can you transition from, I noticed Jamie made this comment in the keynote this morning. How can we move away from rewarding exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity tied to self-worth to leadership modeling that it's important to take support for rest and play and recovery? So as a leader, are you putting in an office message that really shares what you're doing with your leave time? Maybe it's going on a hike or taking vacation with family or decompressing and disconnecting from technology. Those are some really powerful leadership strategies that you can apply. Things like shifting to a mindset of being a learner and getting it right. So who are you asking for input from on design for your well-being strategy? Are you asking all healthy people that are well known to be taking good care of themselves? Or are you also connecting with and having maybe focus groups with people who are struggling? So one of the other thing I wanted to do this morning is try to connect core values of the organization with strategies for well-being. So some examples up here that you can look at later as well. If we think about resilience, mental health has been a significant challenge through the COVID-19 pandemic. Something you can do in the organization is provide managers with mental health first aid training. So it's the training to recognize when folks in the organization might be struggling with mental health. 1 in 5 adults will experience a mental health event in their lifetime. And so it's very common, and normalizing that and creating a culture of empathy and access to the resources and care that individual needs. That's really what the mental health first aid training is about. And we're doing more and more of this with our clients. I know Mascoma Bank is planning this right now for a cohort of employees and leaders. So your challenge then is, as a leader, to think about what are those core leadership values that you can apply to creating a culture of well-being. What specific goals or actions can you take and by when? So setting a SMART goal around that. And then back to that kind of social support, who can you tap to help you execute those goals so that you can have that accountability and that support for getting down that path. So hopefully, I know I cut out a couple of times on this, so we've missed a little bit of content, but hopefully sharing some new thinking and shifting mindset, some strategies, some research that helps you think about leadership for well-being in a different way. I think overall, the message I want to say is that this is really about progress. It's not about perfection when it comes to individual health behaviors or a culture for well-being. Making those little shifts, those brave changes along the way that leads to positive change overall.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us this morning.